Amelia Bedelia, Unleashed. Chapter 6, Skates Up. The next afternoon, Amelia Bedelia's mother looked out the kitchen window. Uh-oh, she said. Storm clouds coming. It looks like it's going to rain cats and dogs. I hope not, said Amelia Bedelia. I hate to have a St. Bernard fall on my head. Besides, I have to meet Diana and Charlie in the park. Then take this umbrella, said her mother. Amelia Bedelia shook her head. That isn't big enough, she said. It couldn't save me from a falling hula. Don't worry about that, said Amelia Bedelia's father. Even if it rains cats and dogs, do you know the worst thing that can happen? Years of experience warned Amelia Bedelia not to ask, but she did anyway. No, Dad, she said. What's the worst thing that can happen? I'm glad you asked, said her dad. If it rains cats and dogs, you might step in a poodle. Her father began to chuckle to himself. Amelia Bedelia shuddered involuntarily at the thought of stepping into Pierre. That's the worst joke I've ever heard, she said. Her dad snorted and laughed really loudly. It was so embarrassing. Amelia Bedelia's mother rolled her eyes. I hope you realize, honey, she said, that no one enjoys your jokes more than you do. Amelia Bedelia arrived at the park on time, even though her mom made her drag along a dumb umbrella. She waited for Diana at the bench where they always met. Charlie and Pierre arrived a few minutes later. Hey, Charlie said, where are the dogs? I'm not sure, said Amelia Bedelia. Diana's late. I'll call her later. I can still walk Pierre for you if you want me to. Okay, said Charlie. Amelia Bedelia took Pierre's leash and they began to walk. She told Charlie about her dad's step in a poodle joke. Charlie laughed, and this time she did too. Actually, said Charlie, your dad's right. A long time ago, poodles were trained as hunting dogs. They were retrievers, and they splashed into ponds and through puddles. That's how they got their name. Amelia Bedelia couldn't wait to tell her dad that. Maybe her dad was smarter than even he thought he was. Up ahead, Amelia Bedelia saw the same bunch of skateboarders Charlie had run into yesterday. They were hanging out right at the top of a long, steep hill. They were exactly where Amelia Bedelia, Charlie, and Pierre were heading. The skateboarders remembered Pierre and Charlie. They started to laugh and hoot, and the tall one put his fingers to his mouth to whistle, but Amelia Bedelia didn't give him a chance. She did what she did best. She asked a question. How do you ride one of these things? She hopped onto the deck of a skateboard and robbled back and forth. Whoa, she yelled, waving her arms for balance with an umbrella in one hand and Pierre's leash in the other. It's super easy, said one of the guys. Just head downhill and lean from side to side like riding a wave on a surfboard. Suddenly, a squirrel bounded by, hoppity hop hopping down the sidewalk. Pierre took off after that squirrel like a rocket. The chase was on. Double whoa, yelled Amelia Bedelia. She squatted down to keep her balance as Pierre pulled her behind him. Pierre may have looked slightly silly with his grim and puffy coat, but under those fluffy pom poms were strong, ripping muscles. He pulled Amelia Bedelia along with no trouble at all. The squirrel raced ahead. Pierre, barking happily, chased the squirrel, and zipping behind them was Amelia Bedelia. Stop, stop, please stop, she hollered all the way down the hill. The long, steep sidewalk ended at a large circular fountain with a round pool that was deep enough for wading. In the center was a statue of a mermaid that spit water into the sky. The mermaid reminded Amelia Bedelia of her mom spitting out her water at the dinner table. Even though she was scared, Amelia Bedelia began to giggle. Then she stopped. Amelia Bedelia was going so fast she couldn't jump off. She wished her mom could help her now. If she fell, she'd be one giant scab. She wished she asked that skateboarder another question. How do you stop? Stop! The squirrel zigzagged fiercely, but kept heading for the fountain, with Pierre hot on his trail and Amelia Bedelia holding on for dear life. She leaned backward, forward, from side to side, twisting and turning to keep her balance. Amelia Bedelia heard shouting. She looked over her shoulder and saw Charlie. He was leading the pack of skateboarders who were cheering her on. Look at her. She's carving like an expert. What a natural! She'll get hurt, yelled Charlie. Just then the squirrel darted to the left. So did Pierre, yanking the leash out of Amelia Bedelia's hand. Now she was heading straight for the fountain. Amelia Bedelia leaned back. Pop went her umbrella as it opened behind her and began to slow her down. The front wheel of the skateboard jumped onto the rim of the fountain. The spinning mermaid was the last thing Amelia Bedelia saw before she shut her eyes. Charlie and the skateboarder saw the front end of the skateboard just clear the edge of the fountain. Amelia Bedelia leaned forward toward the mermaid statue to catch her balance. Then she leaned backward as far as she could. She rode the rim of the fountain in a complete, perfect circle. By the time she came around to where she had started, the skateboard had run out of steam. Amelia Bedelia jumped to the ground. Phew! The skateboarders and Charlie stood in stunned silence. Then they all let out a huge whoop and raced toward her. Charlie was the first to reach Amelia Bedelia. Are you all right? He asked. I guess so. Yep, she said. The skateboarders went wild. They hoisted Amelia Bedelia onto their shoulders and carried her around and around the fountain. You're amazing. What a set of moves. How did you do that? Teach us how to ride like that, like now. Amelia Bedelia laughed. Okay, but maybe some other day, she said. We won't put you down until you promise, said the guys. I promise, said Amelia Bedelia. But then she panicked. Where's Pierre? Charlie pointed at a tree. Pierre was leaping up on the trunk and barking. From a high branch, a chattering squirrel hurled nuts at Pierre's head. Amelia Bedelia and Charlie ran over and grabbed Pierre's leash. That was cool, Amelia Bedelia, said Charlie. It was amazing that you hung on to Pierre's leash. Thanks. No problem, said Amelia Bedelia. I know, said Charlie. Let's go to Pete's Diner to celebrate. Today, you can get two hot fresh sundaes for the price of one. Great, said Amelia Bedelia. She hopped her knees. Oh, back up. She hoped her knees would stop shaking by the time she got there. Amelia Bedelia and Charlie spent the rest of the afternoon at Pete's. Charlie told her all about Pierre and poodles. Amelia Bedelia learned that Charlie's mom was passionate about poodles, but that Pierre was Charlie's responsibility. He fed Pierre and walked Pierre and even groomed and bathed Pierre. My mom thinks I do a great job, Charlie said. She even entered Pierre in that big dog show on Saturday night. She sure will win first prize. You will, said Amelia Bedelia. Pierre is amazing. Ba-boom went a clap of thunder. It began to rain cats and dogs. Poor Pierre was outside getting soaked. Amelia Bedelia pleaded with Pierre. uh, Amelia Bedelia pleaded with Pete until he let Pierre come inside, just this once. Charlie parked Pierre under the table in their booth. Keep him quiet and out of the way, said Pete. I don't want anyone to step in a poodle. From under their table, Pierre let out a huge yawn. It was a long time before Amelia Bedelia and Charlie could stop giggling.